All right, everyone, welcome to our parent informational session as part of our shadow program. We know that it looks a little bit different than it has in past years, but our biggest goal is still just to give you a glimpse into what it might be like to be part of the Sequoia High School community. We're also doing a bunch of things to accommodate your students as well. Hopefully they've been matched up with a shadow and maybe they've gotten a chance to attend some of our shadow panel sessions that we're doing in afternoons. If you don't get a chance to attend those live, we are recording them and posting them on the shadow page of the Sequoia website. So that's the same page that you all signed up for a shadowing assignment on. We're recording all those videos and loading them on there. For those of you who are just arriving late, I will put into the chat one more time a electronic version of our parent information packet. It's just got a bunch of important dates and reference points for you. Perhaps one of the most important things in that parent information packet is one of the last pages, which I call the experts. It's basically contact information for department chairs or heads of different programs, athletics, special education, band, things like that. If you have specific questions about those programs, you can try me and I might know them, but I do have to say that for sort of the more intimate questions, those heads of those departments may be the best people to address just head on. I'm really happy tonight to also say that we're joined by a couple of Sequoia parents. So Sarah Mancini and Michelle Moyer are both here to give some insight that I can't necessarily give. So I can give the teacher perspective, but not necessarily the parent perspective. So at times throughout this presentation, I'll ask for their input just on a couple things. We're also joined by Sophia Oliver, who's one of our administrative vice principals at Sequoia. And so she's going to say a few words in just a few moments here to kind of get the night going. So the way that I like to start this presentation is first off acknowledging that everyone in this room might be at a different level with knowing whether or not they're going to be part of the Sequoia community going forward. Some of you might be 100% positive that we're going to be your home, and others of you might still be looking at different options, and that's totally fine. When I start this presentation, I think the question that comes up most often from parents over the past few years that I've been doing this is, what is it about Sequoia? What is Sequoia? What's the Sequoia-ness? What makes it a unique place? What do you kind of hang your hat on? And I know how cliche that answers to that question can be, but I also still feel really, really confident in answering that question by just giving sort of, if you went and asked 100 different students at Sequoia, or you asked a bunch of staff members, and I do this experiment all the time. If you ask them that question, what makes Sequoia Sequoia? The overwhelming majority of them are giving you something about this feeling of community. This is a sense, the sense that this is a place where people feel safe, that they can grow as students and as young people, where individual differences are not only recognized, but celebrated. It's an incredibly diverse community, both of backgrounds and learning styles and interest sets. And I think that every day that I spend at Sequoia's campus, that gets brought home for me. I always liked at this time to just kind of mention the fact that I feel so lucky to work at a place where that's the truth. And it's not to say that we don't value other things like excellence and achievement. Those are, of course, important to us. But I think when push comes to shove, that idea of community, of inclusivity, of friendliness is probably the most important thing on the campus at Sequoia High School. So I feel really happy about that. Not to throw any other school under the bus, but my wife worked for many years at another school in the same district, and she didn't always feel like she could echo those same sentiments. And as our family grows, we moved a few years ago to Fairfield, so I'm coming to you from right by the Jelly Belly factory right now. But one of us loved our job so much that we wanted to stay at Sequoia. And if you need to find my wife, you can find her at Armio High School in Fairfield. So that's just how that is. But like I said, we're really proud of that community feeling. And as you see on the screen, our school motto, Unali'i, translates as a place of friends. It's a motto that goes back many, many, many decades and is really built into the history of Sequoia. I wanted to pause just for a moment and stop the share and allow our administrative vice principal, Sophia Oliver, just to say a few words, welcome you all tonight, and say whatever it is that she needs to say. And so I'll turn it over to her. Sophia, go ahead.
Hi, all. Welcome. It's so nice to see everybody here this evening. I feel like Corey said it all, but I will say a few words anyway. It's absolutely a place of friends. Every day I go on campus, I feel that way. Of course, it's a little empty right now, but Corey's leadership students continue to remind us through their videos and through their online rallies that we continue to maintain that this is a community and a community for everyone. That being said, we are the one IB International Baccalaureate School in the district. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that and know this. And we do see on our campus that IB is for all. We had an equity grant a few years back, deliberately to look at our student body and make sure that that community was an IB community that could serve all of our students. So that's very, very important to us. One of our goals over the last several years has been to work to make sure that every student can take at least one IB class. So not necessarily the IB diploma, but one IB class. And I feel like there is something for everyone. I haven't looked at Corey's parent packet, the one that he connected, but I would certainly encourage folk to explore the website, look at the student life tab and the clubs that we have. There's a huge array. So there's something for every student, I believe, at Sequoia. Things like our academies, having a health career academy, a school within a school for students that are interested in health careers, a digital arts academy for students more interested in tech. And part of that place of friends and community means that those programs are intertwined with everything that we do. For instance, if there's something we want to advertise at Sequoia, we get our digital arts academy involved. So their projects are very real life and in the moment. Our Health Careers Academy has helped with our emergency drills. So when we have to evacuate for fire drill, for instance, they are on the field checking in classes, checking attendance, making sure that everyone is happy and healthy. So very much the students are a part of the community. You see that in our visual performing arts as well. We are the one school, again, in our district that has PE dance. And our dance shows have also become a community event. It's possible that some of you have seen the dance shows in Carrington or watched a dance video online. A wide array of different visual and performing arts opportunities for students as well. You know, as Corey mentioned, I've been in the district for 22 years now. And I've worked at Menlo Atherton, which I loved. I've worked at Carlmont, which I loved. But Sequoia is certainly my home, and I thoroughly enjoy that community that Mr. Uhald spoke of. So I will have to leave early tonight. My apologies for that, but I am going to put my email in the chat. I'm very responsive over email. So if there's anything I haven't answered or there's any concerns that you may have, feel free to email me anytime. More than happy to respond if there's anything I could help with in helping you understand the place that we all love so much. Thanks for being here again.
Great, Sophia, thank you so much. And she will go ahead and put her email in the chat so that if you do have questions from an administrative standpoint, you could maybe reach out to her that way. Okay, I'm gonna seize control of the screen back as we continue on with some of our actual presentation semantics. One caveat about this presentation, I'm gonna speak primarily about Sequoia in a typical year. Obviously, we're going through a lot different this year, and I'm definitely happy to acknowledge any questions about how we're handling distance learning. But we are hopeful that as we get into next school year, the 2021 and 22 school year, that the experience will be something closer to a traditional experience. So we're gonna look at it a little bit from that way, and then I can address specific other questions from there. So one thing that's important for us to mention is that Sequoia is on a block schedule. And what that means, to sort of simplify it, is that students go to half their classes each day for twice as long. And there's a whole laundry list of reasons why Sequoia adopted a block schedule. But I like to talk about it from my experience as a teacher. Prior to moving over to student activities, where I am now, I was the chair of the social studies department. And I really thought that teaching on a block schedule, this longer period, it allowed me to teach to a bunch of different modalities. So I could do a direct instruction lecture and then have the kids work in small groups a little bit, and then come back and do a class review, and then maybe an enrichment project or a role play or a simulation. You could do all those different things. I think when you have this sort of whirlwind every day for 45 or 50 minutes, there's a little bit more pressure on you to kind of feel like you need to do that direct instruction, that PowerPoint lecture, which doesn't always land, especially that constantly. Think about it again from a science room perspective. If you're doing a lab and you've got to spend 20 minutes setting up a lab and 15 minutes taking it down, and your class is only 45 minutes long, that doesn't really allow for you to get into the meat of the lesson. So for that reason, we really thought that block scheduling kind of has its place there. So what we do, we're on a schedule where students go to their, Monday is an all period day. So students are still going to go to all their classes in a traditional schedule on Mondays. And then Tuesday through Friday, we're on this block. Tuesday and Thursday, we call A days. Students go to their odd number classes, 1, 3, 5, and 7. And on Wednesdays and Fridays, we call those B days. Students go to their even number classes, 2, 4, 6, and 7. And I'm well aware that you're probably saying, hey, wait a second, 7th is on both days and it's a weird time. And that's true. The reason that we adopted a 7th period is back when we adopted this block scheduling, there was some concern about certain programs. We have certain classes and programs that are fundamentally built on the fact that they need to meet every day of the week. For example, we have a program called AVID, Achievement via Individual Determination. And that's sort of a hybrid life skills, study skills class that is makes it its mission to help students who are going to be first generation college goers end up at a 4-year university. And so they say, okay, we're going to get you here from point A to point B, but we need to see you every day. Some of our band classes like to meet every day. Some of our advanced language classes and our advanced dance classes like to meet every day to get that sort of repetition in there. And so our compromise was to create that 7th period. So that 7th period meets for 50 minutes and it gets tacked on at the end of each day. So that creates 7 periods, 1 through 7. A student will typically have 6 of those 7 classes. Again, a student will typically have 6 of those 7 classes. About half our student body, maybe a little bit more, actually has a free 7th period. So if they're not enrolled in one of those classes that has to meet every day, they may have a free 7th period. It's not guaranteed, but it's possible. If that's the case, their school day is done at 2:40, sort of a more familiar time. But they might be scheduled into a 7th period just because of the Tetris, the master schedule puzzle. We do have curricular classes that meet 7th period as well. So a student might be placed in a 7th and end up with a free 1st period or a free 3rd period. If they have a free 1st period, they just sleep in a little bit later and come to school later. If they have a free 3rd or free 4th period, a block in the middle of the day, we highly encourage those students to check out our media center on campus. It's a really awesome, awesome location with really great resources, awesome technology, tutors on hand. And the idea is if we're going to keep you in school till 3:40 each day, we want you to give you the opportunity to start working on some of your schoolwork and get that knocked out. So that is sort of how that sets up. There are certain classes, which we'll talk about in a few moments, that you can actually opt into as a 7th class. So your 9th grade student next year is going to have 6 classes. And there's not a lot of choice in that schedule. You're going to have your social studies class, your math class, your English class, your science class, your language, and your physical education class. So you're going to have those 6 courses. If you are interested in taking an additional elective, maybe a band class or a leadership class, those would be something that you opt into. You request that through your guidance counselor. So you won't be taking 7 classes unless you specifically request it. You also might notice on this schedule our 0 period on there, and you're seeing 7:30 and maybe having a mini heart attack that you're gonna have to get your kid to school at 7:30. Also not the case. no ninth graders will have a zero period without specifically requesting it. And I'm pretty sure that the only instance that that'll happen as a ninth grader is if that student is taking our highest level dance class. So our advanced dance class does meet during the zero period. So if your student is a dance rock star and definitely is going to be at the highest level, then that might come into play. Otherwise, no need to worry as ninth graders about a zero period class. Just to summarize, your ninth grader will probably have 6 classes and you have the option to opt into a 7th. I wanted to take just a moment to pause and talk to our parent volunteers who are here about this concept of block scheduling. Maybe wondering if students might look at that and say, oh my gosh, 100 minutes, there's a little bit of culture shock coming to high school. And so I'm just curious, both Sarah and Michelle, did your students experience any sort of difficulty getting used to it, or do they like it now or not like it? Michelle, do you want to start us off, how your student has sort of responded to the idea of block scheduling?
Sure, sorry. Yeah, I think I have a very specific case that might not really translate to a lot of people here, but maybe it will. My daughter came from a really small non-public school of 35 kids from K through 8. So there were 5 kids in her class most years. So, and that's the entire grade. So it was a special ed school and it was very targeted to each child. So coming into Sequoia was sort of a leap of faith for us because, one class was basically the size of the entire school. So, she did have some difficulties with the longer class periods starting, and also because it's all on Zoom right now, it's a lot to sit in front of that screen for that length of time. That being said, I really feel like it's training her to have her attention span be held for that long, and she's doing great. Her grades are wonderful. The teachers, she has an IEP, and so she has a whole team of people that are helping her to adjust, and they've done a wonderful job. And she does complain about the length of the day some days, but I really feel like each class is broken up in such a way that they're not just listening to a lecture the whole time. There's a lot of different things going on, like games and quizzes and breakout sessions with the teachers and with other kids. So it's not just sitting there listening for an hour and 10 minutes. There's a lot more than that going on. And actually the best thing I think is they give them a lot of time to get their work done. So she is not, I've heard horror stories of kids in schools being, doing their homework at midnight, and she's always done with her work by 4 o'clock every day, like 3 or 4 o'clock she's done, and we have our life. And that was really important to us. So I think having some of that classwork, that the work time built into the class is also very helpful. So that's been my experience.
Great, thanks, Michelle. Sarah, do you have anything to add to that? What your experience for your son has been with block scheduling, and your son is a senior, so he's got a few more years of experience there. What have you seen?
He really enjoys it. Excuse me. It was a bit of an adjustment at the beginning of freshman year, just as everybody has mentioned, the length of time for classes on Tuesday through Friday, but it's really worked well. And again, the advantage that they would say, I believe, is homework is not necessarily due the next day. The Tuesday class homework might be due Thursday. And yes, that helps with their time management skills as well. But overall, he's really enjoyed the block schedule.
That's great. Yeah. And I try to always check in with my students, and here in this meeting, my goal is just to give you sort of an honest reflection of that. I think that as I talk to students, it doesn't work for everyone. So, some students say 100 minutes is just too long to sit in a class. But I would say that the majority of them, something like 75 to 80% maybe, say that, it was tough at the beginning, 2 to 3 weeks to get used to it. But once they do kind of acclimate, that I think the majority of them prefer the pace that a block schedule allows. That's just been my experience talking to students. Again, it's not a one size fits all, but that's what I hear on response. Okay, let's continue to move on. Next, Sequoia is an IB school. So again, this is a sort of a hot button topic, and the people in this room probably have, again, all different knowledge bases of IB. Some of you could probably recite the IB charter to me, and other people have never heard of it before, which is totally fine. So I'd like to start just sort of from the beginning and say that IB, or International Baccalaureate, is an international program that is an honors track. So Sequoia's honors classes are IB courses. With very few exceptions, we don't teach AP courses or advanced placement. If you were shadowing at Carlmont or Woodside or Menlo Atherton, they would talk to you about AP classes, advanced placement. So the next question, well, what's the difference between IB and AP, and why should we care? And we do say that we have entire departments dedicated to answering that question in much longer form than I'm going to, but I will give you the shortened version here. Advanced placement or AP courses want you to know a little bit about the breadth of a subject. So if you were taking a US history course, you would know a little bit about everything that happened from settling the New World all the way through the modern day. And you would do really well on an identification test or a multiple choice type test. IB changes the influence slightly and says, we want you to know a few things and know them really, really well. And then focuses on developing the skills associated with demonstrating mastery of those topics. So think about being able to write essays or debate. And so I kind of call it more like an upper division college class as opposed to a survey class. That is a gross overgeneralization of AP versus IB, but that's sort of the way that we pitch it. I think that it ties in really nicely with the shift across education to Common Core, where the education process is trending more towards teaching students how to do things and skills-based rather than retaining sort of trivial facts and names, dates, places, and stuff like that. The other really important component of IB is that because it's an international program, there's this component of international citizenship, of global citizenship, that doesn't always exist in AP either. So especially as you get into those junior and senior level classes, the curriculum is going to really talk about what it means to be a contributing member of a global society. If you take the IB diploma, which I'll talk more about in just a second, there's also a community service component of that diploma. So for IB, if you take, you might have heard of the IB diploma. So the IB diploma is if you commit to taking the highest level, the highest rigorous set of classes all the way through your senior year, you can earn the IB diploma. It's no joke. It looks like 6 IB classes as a junior, 6 classes as a senior, and all these extra things as well. Something like 10% of our graduating class are candidates for the full IB diploma. So it's not a huge number. But I do like to recognize that another misnomer that people have sometimes is, well, IB is an all or nothing program, and that's not at all the case. So some students may in fact choose to do that full IB diploma. Other students may not, but it doesn't mean that they can't still take some IB classes. In fact, it's a school goal of Sequoia's that every single student who graduates will take at least one IB class. And we're not at 100% at that yet, but we've grown that number every year since we established it as a school goal. Last year in a graduating class of about 430 kids, we ended up with nearly 300, almost 75% of the graduating class taking at least one IB class. So those numbers we're proud of, and we're continuing to grow those numbers also. I like to talk about my own experience here just because I like to call attention to the fact that however many different students are at Sequoia, the decision about whether to take full IB or partial IB or how much IB is a very, very personal decision that just has to sort of be copacetic with whatever your personal situation is. If you'd asked me as an 8th grade or 9th grade student, even if I would have been a full IB diploma student, I would have said, absolutely 100%. Academics were important in my family. School would always come pretty easy to me. And so I would have definitely said that. And then when I got to freshman year, sophomore year, and you ended up having to make that decision about midway through your sophomore year, I just had too many other things going on that were important to me that I didn't want to give up. I was doing student government and journalism and multiple varsity sports, and I wanted to take photography. There was just, as a high school student, there's so many options, and I wanted to do everything, and you had to make certain choices. So I did make that choice. I actually backed off of IB classes in math and science because they were really challenging for me. I ended up staying with history and English, took the exams at the end of my senior year in those classes that I did take the IB courses in, and ended up still getting college credit. And I had some friends that stayed with full IB diploma, and it was the perfect fit for them. So also, I know that Sarah's son, Andrew, is a full IB diploma candidate. So this is a time where I'd like to invite her to just talk about that sort of decision process for him. And I know that he's someone who definitely has his hand in a lot of other things also. So I don't mean to say that you can't also take electives and be involved outside. Andrew does an incredible job of that. So Sarah, you want to talk for just a minute about Andrew's experience now that he's in 12th grade with this whole IB diploma, the decision to take it or not, and so on?
Well, I think he was like you as a freshman in that he thought he would do the full diploma, and also did an elective which was banned as a freshman and sophomore, and even did journalism as a sophomore, journalism class as a sophomore, and then looked at the curriculum for IB and realized he would want to take all those classes anyway, and so engaged, signed up for the diploma, the full diploma, which, as Corey said, you declare sort of midway through the sophomore year. There are extra components to it beyond the classroom work, and he thought they sounded interesting and engaging, and so he's in the midst of it. In fact, he took an IB test yesterday and today, and it was rigorous, but he felt well prepared for it. So he's been able to do his electives and club stuff after school, as well as the diploma. But it's definitely rigorous work, but he has enjoyed it and is very glad he made the commitment to do it.
That's great. I don't want to go too much deeper into IB here because we do have a couple of supplementary opportunities for you to find out information about IB. And I should mention that ICAP, when you see the abbreviation ICAP, ICAP, the way to think about that is just pre-IB. The way that IB is built is that it primarily happens during 11th and 12th grade for students. So if you're going to take an honors class in your sophomore year, it's more than likely going to be called ICAP. So ICAP English or ICAP Biology. But just think about that as pre-IB. They're going to use the same terminology, the same strategies, and really prepare you for those IB courses your junior and senior year. But as I did mention, there are a couple of additional follow-up opportunities to get more info about IB and ICAP. The first of them is actually tomorrow, so this is timely. Our next afternoon student speaker shadow panel session is tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And as I mentioned before, we are recording those and posting those. So you can either attend live or check it out on the shadow page afterwards. Then the most important day to add to your calendars is at the bottom of your screen. January 12th is our IB info night. That's when our IB coordinator, Lisa McCann, actually takes over and does a way more extensive job than I ever could talking to you about what the IB program really looks like. So if you are an IB candidate or interested in even more information, please put that date, January 12th, on your calendar. If you visit the IB page of the Sequoia website, you'll get information there as well. As I'm talking about the Sequoia website, I just wanted to throw this page up here really quick because it's another good resource for you. Again, many of you are probably sitting there with specific questions about if my student takes this math class as an 8th grader, what do they take as a 9th and 10th grader? If my student is involved, is taking French 2, where does that get them by their senior year? And I can't spend the time tonight going into those types of questions. And I'm actually not, I probably am going to give some wrong information if I tried. So I want to steer you either towards those department chairs that I included in that parent information packet, or also on the Sequoia website in the guidance department page is all of that information. They do a really great job. They've got what we call the program planning handbook. And the program planning handbook is going to detail descriptions of every course that students can take. And it's also got a page in there called the course planning worksheet. I put the 9th grade course planning worksheet in your information packet, but that exists for each of the additional grades as well. It basically says, if your student takes this as a 9th grader, they're going to take this or this or this as a 10th grader. And it lays out the pathways for them. Each of the departments in that guidance department thing, it's got laid out. So really nice, easy to read graphics for math and science and English and social studies that say this is what you take as a 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So if you have questions specifically pertaining to that, it's a really good resource to check out the guidance department page of the Sequoia website. The next topic I wanted to mention, to talk briefly about, is the idea of academic monitoring. And so all of this stuff is done with the intention of creating transparency for students and their parents and teachers, and just sort of laying it out, all out on the table. The idea is to avoid a situation where your student is telling you all quarter, all semester that they have an A, they have an A, they have an A, and then you get your report cards and you're like, those don't look like the A's that I'm used to. So we have an online gradebook system called Canvas, and Canvas has become something that teachers have really leaned on this year, particularly with distance learning. So it's an online gradebook. It also allows teachers to post assignments, to set due dates, to put resources, PowerPoints, videos, all that kind of stuff on there, and then update those grades. You can customize Canvas to sort of be as clued in as you want into this process as well. So you can get daily notifications that let you know every time your student misses an assignment or turns an assignment in or is late with an assignment. So you can kind of make it be what you want it to be. And so I'm curious, again, as we get to our distance learning situation, but in the past as well, Michelle and Sarah, are your students finding Canvas easy to use or sort of a challenge? Are you finding that teachers utilize Canvas or maybe are not as good with it as you would hope? And I am not paying these volunteers to be here, so this is an honest reflection. Michelle, do you want to give a little bit of feedback about how your student has interacted with Canvas and how you may have interacted with Canvas also?
Sure, I'm super impressed with it. I had a picture in my head of what being at a big public high school would be like in these days, and it's so much more technologically advanced than the small school that we were at. And Canvas has been sort of a lifesaver for us because, like I said, coming in, we didn't really know what to expect with the level that my daughter was at. And I've been able to see all her assignments, see how she's doing with them, see when she turns them in, what grade she gets. I get the daily summary of Canvas activity. And it's allowed me to say, you know what, she's doing great. I can back off. I don't need to helicopter anymore. It's very easy to use. There's some glitches with like setting up your Google account and getting their, a lot of people have their own Google account personally, but then you have to set up one for school, and sometimes the two don't mix very well. But it was very easy to fix those tech issues in the beginning. So I'm very happy with it. And I think my daughter had no problems getting up to speed with it. She's very happy with it too.
Okay, great. Sarah, anything to add to that or? Okay.
No.
All right, perfect. So, so that is our online system. We also have another system called Infinite Campus, which is our more administrative tool for teachers. It's where we're going to track attendance, truancy, discipline, things like that. But it's also the system that's going to store student transcripts moving forward. So that's a good one to have. And then I also like to mention Naviance. Naviance is a system that runs through our College and Career Center. So our College and Career Center, incredible resource on campus. Teresa Ignitis does an awesome job working really closely with students during their time at Sequoia to help them onto whatever's next, whether that is college or vocation or the armed services, all these different options. She's got information about them and information on how to get there. But she does introduce a program very early when students arrive on campus called Naviance. And what Naviance does is it's basically a system that helps scaffold the process of applying to college from a very early day. And I am not at all saying that students should be thinking about applying to college as ninth graders. That's not my personal belief. I don't look at it that way. But we're almost going to trick them into it without even telling them that we're doing it. We're going to start telling them early on what it means to keep track of your extracurriculars or your commitments or the things that you do. You're going to start to build a custom profile with your interests and your background and all these kind of different things. And then it's going to teach you lessons along the way, like what it means to create a resume and a cover letter and all these things. And by the time you get to college applications your senior year, you've got a portfolio, you've got a packet of all this stuff. And you've also got a portfolio of digitized like grant and scholarship and financial aid opportunities that are completely customized to your own sort of individual profile. So some cool options there. Naviance is a great program. And again, it helps make that process easier. All students I talk to are thankful they've had it by the time they get to their 12th grade. The next slide is a really important one to me. I started this presentation by talking about this idea of community, this sense of everyone being on board, and that comes down to parents and everything too. We couldn't do all the things that we do without support at home, without support on campus and at our events and all those kinds of things. Again, I say this recognizing the fact that some of you know you'll be part of Sequoia and some of you might not know yet. But as soon as you're ready, you can begin opting into some of these communication tools that we have. We have a really great PTSA that's looking forward to having your support. They produce Sequoia 101. So if you go again to the Sequoia website or the PTSA website, you can access this PowerPoint called Sequoia 101. If you attend 9th grade orientation next year, they will show this to you, but in case you want to start doing some summer homework studying on your own, you can do that. The PTSA also puts out our Sequoia Sentinel, a weekly newsletter that keeps everyone abreast of different things that are going on, both for students and for parents. Our bulletin that we put out, normally in a normal year, we're doing that on a daily basis. This year, we're putting it out weekly on Mondays. But it reflects sort of the on-campus things that are going on. So if you want to know what clubs are meeting or what athletic teams have had some success, we do that sort of weekly bulletin. It's also what gets read over the PA system, as you might be familiar with in a traditional high school setting. We have active foundation and boosters groups that support our athletics and our VPA. When I just talk about these ideas, these things about getting involved and these groups, it's not a plea for money. That's not what I'm asking for. What I'm asking for is that if you do come be part of the Sequoia community, that you just have an eye on what's going on and you check in with your student and encourage them to get involved. The reason that I'm working at a high school now is because I had such a good high school experience when I was there. I really loved the time I spent in high school. I know that isn't the case for everyone. It wasn't the case for some of my friends and my sister who couldn't wait to get out. But as I look back, I'm pretty sure that the reason I had such a good time was because of finding these different niches and finding ways to get involved. That's what keeps it exciting and energizing. And so just encouraging the same of you and the same of your students as we go forward. All of these get involved opportunities are, again, linked in your parent information packet that I put in at the beginning of the session. You can find also specific instructions on how to get involved or how to opt into those things as well. So with that, that completes the official presentation section of our session today. But what I wanted to do is make sure that you all get opportunities to ask any questions that you may have of either myself or our parent volunteers who are here. You can go ahead and drop questions into the chat and we'll field them that way. So there is a question in the chat. What are the class sizes for regular classes, for IB classes, and academy classes? So the answer for standard classes at Sequoia is somewhere in the neighborhood of 32 to 33 students. That's what we shoot for. 32 and a half is the number that I throw on there. IB classes tend to be a little bit bigger just because there's so many students that are interested in those IB classes. So IB classes sometimes will run at 34 or 35 students. They don't often get bigger than that. Certain electives will run even larger. PE is not an elective, but it does run big just because the state requirements on what the ratio of an instructor to students are not as stringent there. So there may be 45 students in a PE class. Some electives will run a little bit bigger. My 9th grade leadership class right now is running at 45, but that's something they often check with the teacher about and talk to them. to answer what the standard size class is, 32, 33 is what you can expect. The question also referenced academies, which I didn't really get a chance to go into much today, but it's a really good thing for me to bring up here. We have 2 on-campus academies. They are basically small schools within schools, and they have 2 primary focuses. One is to provide additional structured academic support for students in those academies. They do that by having reduced class sizes, so they're often running in the mid-20s. So they get a little bit of higher level of teacher attention to students. The other main goal of those academies is to provide vocational training in one of 2 major pathways. So we have a digital arts academy. So if students are interested in computer or graphic design, computer repair, web design, video game design, those are a bunch of different elective classes offered inside that digital arts academy. Then our health careers academy also presents students with opportunities to find out about careers in healthcare. So they do stuff that become first aid CPR certified. They go do internships at local hospitals. They'll do all these kind of things. They'll work with first responders, get training and all those different things. So our academies will run at smaller size there in the mid-20s. Another question about if we haven't been contacted about a shadow, should we email someone? This is a really good thing for me to call attention to. Our students, so I've been assigning shadows. Typically, it's about a 1-week turnaround from when you sign up to when I get a shadow partnered with you and when they reach out. That's not guaranteed, but it's a rough guess. Many of you signed up, provided a student email address in addition to your parent email address. But if the student email address that you provided was a Redwood City school email address or a San Carlos City school email address, those email addresses block anything coming from seq.org. So we may have reached out and been blocked in those cases. What I've encouraged my students to do, my shadow students, is then to send a follow-up email to the parent and say, hey, just so you know, I was blocked from being able to get a hold of your student. Could you please pass this information along? If students send their outreach to shadows and to parents, they wait for 1 week. If they don't hear back, then they send another follow-up 1 week later. And if a week after that, they still haven't heard back, then they make a phone call to the parent phone number. So that's our process. If you feel like the time is sort of dragged on and you haven't heard back, just send me a quick email and I can look into that. I can see whether or not the holdup is on our end, if our shadow host just hasn't reached out, or if it's an email issue or something like that. So again, expect about a week from when you sign up to get contacted. And if it's anything much longer than that, just reach out to me. I can address that on an individual basis. Enrollment, that's another good question. So open enrollment, I believe has begun or it's about to begin through the Sequoia website. Again, if you go on to the parent information tab of the Sequoia website, there's a page you can click on about enrollment, and that open enrollment period will go through January. Again, that answer is slightly different, again, from if you come from a major feeder school. So if you're attending Central or Kennedy or Hoover or a school that sends, I think it's more than 30 students to Sequoia on an annual basis, the process is going to be kind of force-fed to you. Our guidance counselors are going to be actually going out to the middle schools, setting up those appointments, giving you your classes. So it's very straightforward if you do attend a primary feeder school. If you don't attend a primary feeder school, I always say, please reach out to our guidance department. And I'm actually going to put Melissa Perez. Her email is here, Melissa Perez. She's our head guidance counselor. She's probably the best person to just check in with and say, hey, I go to the school. I'm not even sure if it's a feeder or not, but my student's interested in going to Sequoia. How do we set up and get classes? And she's the person that can help you out there. Another question about not being zoned for Sequoia. In the past, and my data is sort of a year or two outdated here, but the lottery system to get into Sequoia was about 50%. if you were not zoned for Sequoia and you applied to get in, it was about 50% chance to get in. And it has nothing to do with how soon you do the open enrollment. The open enrollment is open as long as it is through January. When it closes, they throw all those names in a proverbial hat, draw names out. I mean, I'm sure they have a more high-tech system than that, but it's a lottery-based system, and it was about half. When I heard last year's numbers, I think those numbers have been going up a little bit. So maybe a little bit better than 50-50 is the rough guess there. Other questions in the chat. And so I think I missed that one, but if Sequoias are homeschooled, do we need to enroll? That process will be done through those feeder schools. So you will enroll, but it will be sort of spoon-fed to you. The guidance counselors will come to the students and actually talk with them, set up and get them into the system. Other questions about anything? I know that you know, I'm always wary of time. I want to respect your time. I didn't get into certain things like athletics or electives or VPA. So if there are questions about those, certainly welcome to throw them out now. I'll give everyone just a few more moments before we say our goodbyes. You can also unmute yourself and just ask a question out loud. Or if you want to talk about how the Rays absolutely need to come back from a 2-1 deficit here in the 7th inning, that would be awesome as well. So anything you want to talk about, you can just unmute yourself and ask, or we'll sort of move towards the end. Sarah or Michelle, do either of you have anything to say, just sort of in summation, or just any sort of words of wisdom for our parents here, anything like that?
I can say my son has really enjoyed the 4 years. I can't believe we're in the college application process. It went by really fast. I would give advice to get involved in something. Let's assume next year is a normal year as far as school, and check out club day and join a club. You can change your child can change their mind if they want to do a different one later, but find a way to get involved. It really does help make a big school feel smaller if you have that club of shared interest with people.
That's great. And Michelle is student is just a 9th grader, so hasn't even gotten the chance to really find her way on campus yet. But Michelle, anything to add there?
Well, yeah, we're only 2 months in, but she's in 3 clubs, and she went to cross country yesterday and today, and wants to do swimming in the spring. And so she's really getting involved and really I mean, these opportunities are just kind of opening up, and to be in like a real high school, and it's wonderful to have them. I wanted to address the person who wanted to know if it's hard to get in. Sequoia is not our home school, and I will tell you, we looked at every school in the district because we weren't coming from a major feeder school, so we didn't have much information on any of them. She shadowed at pretty much every school, and it had such a great feel to it. It just, both of us really were very impressed. So she did the transfer process and she got in. Also, her best friend was not in a zone for Sequoia. She got in as well. So there's only 2 of us, but we both got in. So it's 100% for the 2 of us. But I would say if you're even thinking about it, like it's been such, we're really happy. So go for it. Great.
There's another question about how colleges look at Sequoia specifically. And that's a complicated question. I would say in my experiences, I think there's a lot, if I have a student who's at Sequoia versus a student who's at Menlo, Atherton, or Cromont, or Woodside, or even Menlo, or Sacramento Prep, or Sarah, or St. Francis, I don't think that those types of things make as much of a difference as what the student does while they're in school. So what colleges are really going to look at, I think they're going to look at 2 major things. One, did the student challenge themselves academically, right? So to what extent did they take courses at the school that were the most rigorous available courses? So they'll look at those classes and how a student did in those classes. And the second thing that they'll do is look at a student's sort of holistic experience. Were they involved in extracurriculars? Did they do band for 4 years? Were they involved in crew outside of school? And they did that, religiously. So they're going to look at that sort of student package much more so than looking at a school. I think that Sequoia is certainly well respected. The IB program is really well respected, both in the United States and abroad. We actually send something like a half dozen students a year to school internationally. And in those cases, schools with the IB program are actually looked upon favorably because it's a well-known international program as well. So the answer to that question about what do colleges look at, they're going to look more at the student. They go to Sequoia. Sequoia is a great school. They've cleared that hurdle. Now what are they doing with that experience there?
If I can chime in, I've sat in now on a couple of dozen of college Zoom calls as my son determines which colleges to apply to. And it really, I just can echo what Corey said. And they look at how the child did for what the school offered. They're not comparing Sequoia to an AP school. They're looking at how the child performed, whether the child took the most rigorous courses or was there improvement over time or whatever. It's the student in that school, not the school comparison.
What I do notice, even going back to my own college application process, and then as I watch and I work with seniors every year, so I do talk to them about their experiences. And I have found that certain schools, when you talk about the UC system or the CSU system, comparing them to private schools like USC or Stanford or Duke or whatever, there is some difference in what those schools may be looking for. Certain schools may have a tendency to look more for that well-roundedness. Are they involved with leadership? Do they take leadership positions in student organizations or curricular activities that they're in? And some are going to be more numbers-based. You know, how did they score on this test and that test? What is their GPA? So there are some differences when it comes to which school is going to look at different stuff. But I sort of suspect that's a top discussion for a different night than tonight. So, other questions? Does anybody else have anything they want to ask for the good of the group? Just a couple of things. I wanted to, again, as we leave here, remind you that our Wednesday panel sessions are happening each Wednesday for the next month or so, Wednesdays at 2 o'clock. Tomorrow is IB and ICAP. And then next week are electives, things like culinary, woodshop, and so on. We'll also be doing one a little bit later on Build, which is an entrepreneurial program that's offered to 9th graders. It would be an additional class opted into, a 7th class, like I mentioned earlier. We're also doing one on ASB and leadership a little bit later on. And we're also in the process of creating, normally we have an 8th grade information night that's on campus. We're not going to be doing that on campus this year, but I am working really hard to create an interactive virtual experience for you. And I'm kind of proud of it. So don't trash talk it when I put it out. But that'll be coming out and published in the next, probably the next week or two as we send that out. And it's going to be another source of information. I've compiled a bunch of videos from all these different programs for you to sort of watch and pick and choose which things you're most interested in. So keep an eye out for that via email and on our website. Okay, I'm going to stick around for just a few moments here at the end. If anybody has anything that they want to ask on sort of a more personal level or just in a smaller group, I'm definitely welcome or certainly open to doing that. For the rest of you, thank you so much for taking the time and having the interest to join us tonight. Have a great night and take care of yourselves.